our thoughts and motivations and what we do. We need to keep that in mind here as we try to learn from some of these kings. A major theme, though, is this idea of servant. Solomon was his heart was unlike God's servant David, and so he's going to give his kingdom to what? He's going to give his kingdom, Solomon's kingdom, to one of his own servants, is what he says. And we're going to see that idea of servanthood throughout this lesson. So notice that as we go through, because a leader should be one who serves. We're going to look at the character of Jeroboam here, but before we do, ask another question. How do you have confidence in your abilities? How do you have confidence in your abilities? Testing it out. Okay. Yeah, Nate. I don't know. Yeah. The end result, yeah, is important. Yeah. Follow God. Follow the commandments. Yeah. And you should have confidence in your abilities, of course. What else? Yeah. Mm. It's almost like if I have confidence in God, then I'll grow in confidence in my life as well. Kind of both of you guys are saying. Really good. 1 Kings chapter 11, look at verses 26 through 28. This is where we're introduced to Jeroboam. And it's pretty neat. Jeroboam chapter 11, verses 26 through 28. It says, Now Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon, whose mother's name was Zerah, a widow, also lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the reason why he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built the Milo and closed the breach of the city of David, his father. And the man Jeroboam was very able. And when Solomon saw that the young man was industrious, he gave him charge over all the forced labor of the house of Joseph. Think about Jeroboam here for a moment. I love that he's described in this way. He's able, he's hardworking, he's industrious. What is Solomon all about? Solomon is all about building and expanding his nation and his empire. It says the house of Joseph there. The house of Joseph just means the northern part of Israel, those northern regions. But that is what Jeroboam is going to become king with. He's going to rule over that region. And so he gets this position of power. He gets Solomon's attention, which I imagine is probably very difficult to do amongst thousands of other servants and slaves. And Solomon sees this and puts him in a position of power, and he uses that as an opportunity to start gaining rapport and start building relationships with the people of the north. Now, let's go up, keep going in our text, verses 29 through 39 now. 1 Kings chapter 11, 29 through 39. And at the time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah found him on the road. And now Ahijah had dressed himself in a new garment, and two of them were alone in the open country. Now, when Ahijah laid hold of the new garment, that was on him, he tore it into 12 pieces. So the 12 tribes of Israel there. And he said to Jeroboam, Take for yourselves 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I am about to tear the kingdom from the hand of Solomon, and will give you 10 tribes. But he shall have one tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because they have forsaken me and worshipped other gods, and they have not walked in my ways, doing what is right in my sight in keeping my statutes and my rules as David his father did. Nevertheless, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of David, my servant, whom I chose, who kept my commandments and my statutes. There's a theme there of keeping my commandments and my statutes. Verse 35, but I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand and will give it to you, to Jeroboam, 10 tribes. Yet to his son I will give 1 tribe. That David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I have chosen to put my name. And I will take you, listen to this, and I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. And if you will listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes, by keeping my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you and will build you a sure house, as I built for David. And I will give Israel to you, and I will afflict the offspring of David because of this, but not forever. Wow. I want us to think about the name of Jeroboam here when we read this. The name of Jeroboam means 2 things in Hebrew. It means, may God be great, or may the people be great. May God be great, or may the people be great. That's kind of interesting when you think about Jeroboam and this prophecy and the choice that he is faced here at the end. He's faced with basically two choices here. He can either work and try to make the people great by his own power and his own greatness because he's able and he's industrious, which normally isn't good. I mean, we want to make people great, but not at the cost of serving other gods and ourselves. Or he can do as God tells him, and he can rely on God's greatness, which automatically helps people and who are in his rule just thrive and become better and prosper. Look at verse 37 again. He says, I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. If you will listen to all that I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, and I will be with you and build you a house, a sure house, as I built for David. That's amazing. This is a punishment, and yet he's saying, look, I'm going to still be with you if you follow me. Why would God let him reign over all that his soul desires, though? That seems a little reckless. Seems a little dangerous. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah. That's okay. It's okay. Yeah. 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 Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a really good point. Mm. Mm. We can make our own choices, but ultimately God is in control. God's in control here. Yes, and it's important to do the right thing. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's amazing that that offer extends to all of the kings. And he has an opportunity to do something great here. I love that. I mean, this is a punishment, and he's saying, look, even though it's happening this way, and I'm making it happen this way, you have an opportunity to do something good, to follow my ways, and it's going to be good for you and for the people. It really does show, as you're saying, God's character. He wants to see people succeed. And even though it may be happening this way, he still wants his people to love him and to seek and search after him, of course. Any other thoughts? I find to be very interesting. It's not long, though, before Solomon finds out. You read that in verse 40. Solomon sought, therefore, to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam arose and fled to Egypt and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. That's pretty amazing. Let's look at the character of Rehoboam now. So we have Jeroboam. He's settled there. He's in Egypt. Now Rehoboam comes onto the scene here. And Rehoboam his name is very similar, if you haven't noticed, to Jeroboam. And there's a reason for that. It's very similar in meaning, but there's a slight difference. So you remember, Jeroboam's name means, may God be great, or may the people be great. And Rehoboam means, well, something similar. May God increase, or may the people increase. And so there's this slight difference. And that's interesting when you think of, well, what Rehoboam has. Now that Solomon dies here, and he is becoming king, this is the moment where he becomes king, and he has to now what? Try to increase, or have that desire at least, to increase his kingdom that he has inherited. I want you to imagine for a second that that's you. You're Rehoboam. You're inheriting this kingdom. You're now becoming king. How important would it be for you to keep that up? And I want you to now think about the pressure for a moment that maybe Rehoboam is feeling. I mean, it's your job now to lead the people, to expand the empire, to make it even maybe more successful than your father, King Solomon. And this is King Solomon. It would be hard, I think, probably not live in my father's shoes here, to live in King Solomon's shadow, I should say, where he is the wisest, smartest, richest man. Even Queen Sheba, who hears all these amazing stories, travels a long distance and says, I have never seen wisdom like this, and now Rehoboam is king. It's like, okay, these are big shoes to fill here. What do you think Rehoboam is feeling or thinking when he becomes king? Yeah, thanks, Dad. Yeah, I'd feel that, Nate.
I wonder about it because when you're raised in your father's house, do you ever think that your father's all that fantastic?
When I'm 5, but yeah.
You think that he's just like your dad? You know, that's
Yeah,
your father.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the shoes would be big to fill here, but he may not have thought of it the way that we do, and taken a lot of things for granted that like we do when we are raised in our parents' home.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents are very successful or whatever. We don't think that much about their success. My kids have never known, for example, anything different than their dad's a preacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Other kids look at that and they go, wow, that might be something for some kids.
Mm-hmm.
But for your kids at home, whatever it is that you do, your kids never really think that much about it.
Yeah,
If it's that great or not.
that's true.
And it's like, I think maybe Rehoboam is thinking some of these thoughts until he's in there.
And then it doesn't even concern him. It's like,
You can be taught the right things and still not get it until you're in the game, right?
yeah.
Once you're in the game, it's like, whoa, wow.
Now you have to make the decisions. Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? If he's feeling like there's a lot of pressure to seek wisdom and not have that, well, then maybe he should consult the one who gave Solomon wisdom in the first place, and that's God. What else? What else do you think maybe Rehoboam is feeling? Mm-hmm. Yeah, prove himself. You'll see his character later on kind of look at that. Say that again. Rehoboam? Nah, they weren't. No, they weren't. You think so? They weren't. What else? Could be having an identity crisis, not sure. Maybe a little depressed. Could be way off. What else? Maybe he thinks he's going to excel higher than Solomon did. Let's go ahead and read. Whatever you think, let's read the following text here. Chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. All right? And also, keep in mind, he's grown up in extreme privilege, okay? And he's grown up in extreme privilege, and then Jeroboam is rising up, and he's industrious, and he's from a servant. And so you have these two opposites going to be ruling two different kingdoms, which makes it very interesting. Verse 1, Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. So he has some support there. And as soon as Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard of it, for he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon, then Jeroboam returned from Egypt. So he's kind of playing politics here. And they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you. And he said to them, go away for 3 days, and I'll come again to me. So that people went away. All right. Do you think that that's wise to go away? Another question there. Do you think that's wise to go away and just think, go away and come back another day? Or is it a no-brainer? Should Rehoboam have just said yes, of course, to this request? Or was it wise to say, go away, let me think about it? What do you think? You don't think it was a bad thing? Okay, good. Yeah. Let me process through it. Yeah. It's just a little glimpse. This is his first decision here, one of his first as king. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah, David. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And probably be seeking God himself, right, as well. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Probably so. We'll see. Joey? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Then a mistake happened. Let's read this mistake. Anyone raise hands before? Okay. Look at verses 6 through 15. It says, then King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men, right, who had stood before Solomon his father while he was yet alive, saying, how do you advise me to answer this people? And they said to him, if you will be a servant to this people today and serve them and speak good words to them, when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever. But he abandoned the counsel of the old men and gave that old men gave him, and took counsel with the young men who grew up with him and stood before him. And he said to them, what do you advise me that we answer this people who have said to me, lighten the yoke that my father put on us? And the young men who had grown up with him said to him, thus shall you speak to this people who said to you, your father made our yoke heavy, but yet lighten it for us. Thus you shall say to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's thigh. And now, whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king said, come to me on the third day. Verse 13, and the king answered the people harshly, forsaking the counsel that the old men had given him. He spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. And so the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about by the Lord, that he might fulfill his word, which the Lord spoke to Asa, to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. That's an interesting story here. I mean, he is literally getting advice from two people. I mean, this is the classic story. Old, wise, young, foolish here. And he's getting advice from them, and yet he gets the wrong advice. What I find interesting is, have you seen this theme of servanthood as well? Look at verse 4 again, and then read along with verse 7. Read those two together. Right? The request in verse 4 is, look, your father made our yoke heavy. Now, therefore, lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you. And what is the response of the old men? Do they just say, yeah, sounds good, you should do that, Rehoboam? No, they go on to give wisdom and say, look, if you will be a servant, you, King Rehoboam, be a servant to this people today and serve them and speak good words, be kind to them, be respectful to people who are lower than you, well, then he went on to say, then they'll serve you forever. Forever. Don't just lighten the load. Be a king, be a leader that actually serves and treats people with respect, who maybe doesn't sit on his throne and think of himself as something great and sit on his high horse, but gets down and gets involved in people's lives. We're going to talk about that in the sermon this morning, talk about humility here. You have this kind of concept being discussed and being brought out by these older men and their wisdom. I want you to serve them, he says, and to be a servant. I should say something about a servant's heart, a leader's heart. Any thoughts here? Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Couldn't have said better. He chose pride over humility. And we see that just in verse 7 of Proverbs 2. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. And he's a shield to those who walk in integrity, as you were saying, humility as well. Really good point. Yeah. Any thoughts? Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. I want you to look at something, though, here. This is a lesson for us. As we are Christians, and we should serve others. And not only that, but we should listen to people who are much wiser than us. And we should take their counsel. And I know God had a hand in this here as well, and we have to take that into account. But when we apply to our own lives as well, it might be easy to think, yeah, I'm just going to do things my way, but someone else has done it better. Yeah, Nate. Yeah. Yeah. They are. They're both foolish. Look at another thing here. You get the heart of Rehoboam when he's hanging out with his friends. And he's talking with his friends. And how does he talk about others, right? Not really in a good light. The ESV kind of makes this This is the adult class. The ESV kind of makes this G-rated here when it says, thighs here. You can read verse 10. It says, "And the young men who had grown up with him said to him, 'Thus shall you speak to the people who said to you, your fathers made your yoke heavy, but you lighten it for us. Thus shall you say to them, my little finger is thicker than your father's thigh.'" John, I think you have the New American Standard. Is that right? Well, it says loins. Yeah. And so he's actually they're both being pretty vulgar here, not being respectful at all. And my little finger is thicker than my father's thighs. What is that, or loins? What does that say about his heart? Yeah, he was a bit proud. I mean, it kind of gives us an answer to our question earlier when we were talking about, okay, maybe what is he thinking as king now, as a new king? He's thinking, look, you see, this is me. I am much better than my father. And I'm going to do much better than my father. And I'm going to put more stress and pressure on you as well. Good. Yeah. Yes. I think he has. I think that verse makes it clear. He's like, I've abandoned the counsel of the old men. And then he says, what shall we say? He's already made up in his mind, thinking, I don't feel like I should be a servant to people. I'm better than that. Yeah. Clay. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm. He does, yes. Very spoiled. Yeah. And it's easy to get to that. I think I have everything, and I'll continue to have everything. I'm definitely not going to serve anybody. Walks in, I didn't think about that, walks into that throne room and sits on the throne. No problem. Any thoughts? We have a lot of ground to cover. So let's go ahead and finish off this chapter as we begin to close here. In another class, we're going to look at the second half. This is just beginning the divide of the kingdom now. And so we'll look at that Wednesday, the divide of the kingdom. But let's finish off chapter 12. Chapter 12, verse 16. Then when Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, "What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, look now to your own house, David." So Israel went to their tents. So they just are done. They stopped. There's a strike. But Rehoboam reigned over the people of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah. Then King Rehoboam sent to Adoram, who was the taskmaster over the forced labor, and all Israel stoned him to death with stones. And King Rehoboam hurried to mount his chariots and to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. And when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. And there was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. All right, so they make Jeroboam king here. And he already has a good reputation with everyone. Verse 21. When Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen warriors to fight against the house of Israel, to restore the kingdom to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God. Say to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, thus says the Lord, you shall not go up or fight against your relatives, the people of Israel. Your relatives, that word there is interesting. Every man return to his home, for this thing is from me. Right? This thing is from God, and yet God, again, it shows God's character. I desire peace. These are your relatives. This is a punishment, but don't go on fighting here. And so they listened, and they listened to the word of God, the word of the Lord, and went home again according to the word of the Lord. I'm going to stop there for this morning in our story and look at more later. But just think about that for a moment. This fighting, and then there's this prophecy, and they listen to God. The question is, as we go on in our future classes, are they going to continue to listen to God, or are they not going to continue to listen to God? We're going to see some interesting things, things that maybe you don't expect. And that's class. Thank you for all your comments and your insights.